The Diamond, a place where legends are born, where hitters drop 400-foot bombs, where pitchers throw heat. The home of peaches, yard goats, trash pandas, and sod poodles. This is Ballpark Nation, your home for baseball from sea to shining sea. Now your host, the guy who could never crack his high school starting lineup, Jim Christopher.
And welcome everyone to the finale of Season 1 of Ballpark Nation. It has been a blast. I want to thank all of you for coming along and getting to explore some ballparks with me. If you haven't figured it out by now, a ballpark is one of my happy places on this earth. One of the places where I can truly relax, where I feel really connected to other people, and I get to kind of forget about the world outside the gates of the ballpark. At my core, I'm a storyteller. The whole reason of doing this isn't to create just sort of a bland recount of ballparks or a very black and white, here's why you should go to some place or here's why you shouldn't. I'm hoping that I'm doing a good job of telling stories that you guys are getting involved in and want to stay connected to. And so we had our previous show, Let's Get To, and then after 5 seasons, we stopped the show and then we began Ballpark Nation. It's a different show with a whole different message, but one of our storylines did continue, and that was my quest for 50. Well, during season 1 of Ballpark Nation, we did it. We hit our 50th state. It was a very, very cool experience. I was able to go with Jessica and my kid and my grandkids and my son-in-law. It was a blast. You might say it was number 1 on my bucket list. So as I was thinking about how to recap it and how to make sure the story got told, I thought I need to go to the queen of bucket lists, Tomasso, the person behind the baseball bucket list universe, really, at this point, to have her talk to me to make sure I didn't miss anything when reflecting on my quest for 50.
And so here she is, the head of and the master behind the baseball bucket list, who's going to temporarily take over Ballpark Nation. It's like the line of succession. You're like the vice president of the baseball park nation now.
I feel so powerful, and I really thank you for entrusting me with this honor. I mean, like, we have a lot to talk about. What you just completed is a huge deal, right? So, some people might not know that the impetus behind Baseball Bucket List is to talk to baseball fans about all the crazy, exorbitant things they want to do around the game. And so many people say all 30 ballparks, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you took it a step further. You've seen a game in all 50 states. And I just, man, you got to tell me, what made you want to do this? Like, what was the moment where you're like, yeah, this is it. Let's do it.
I think in part because I like lists and I like completion. And I think in some ways, Anna, it's because the 30 major league parks seem so done, seem so like whatever. And then, the previous version of our show didn't really deal with Major League Baseball so much. So I also wanted to continue to show people that there was baseball wherever you went. And it was always interesting because there would be like, oh, there's baseball in Alaska, like we talked about earlier in the season. And yeah, there's actually a long history of baseball in Alaska. So that was a big part of it. And then I think another big part of it too, I used to joke about how when I was doing the show, I was like Captain America. Like he would always have these episodes or these issues of the comic where he would like get on his motorcycle and see America, the country he fought for, whatever. But there was a little bit of that too. Like there was just so much that I feel like this country has to offer that's not in the 30 Major League Baseball cities. And that was really a big part of it for me too, was getting to see I liken it to going to a Catholic church. It's always the same and it's always different. And so that was a big part of it for me, those 3 main reasons.
Oh, that's a really great analogy. I think it's something we've talked about before is that baseball, minor league baseball in particular, is a great way to see the country, right? To your point, all the major league ballparks are going to be plopped down in the middle of these big cities that you could probably find a million other things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But to find your way through America and just kind of stop off along the way at minor league games, collegiate games, whatever it is, it really has so much to offer. So I'm not going to ask you what your favorite state was because I feel like that's kind of a loaded question. But I mean, was there a place where you were like, all right, it's on the list. I've got to get there. I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. And it was just like such a nice kind of surprise in the best way.
Yeah, okay, so there's a couple of those, and I wouldn't even say not looking forward to it, didn't know what to expect. Kind of thought
Sure.
maybe I would hit it up and then do my due diligence and then move on. And a lot of that was like Spearfish, South Dakota is probably the big one where and I absolutely fell in love with them, with the team. Ended up staying an extra day and going to two games there. And again, I had no idea what to do. I figured like, well, I could at least go see Mount Rushmore while I'm here, and just really surprised me. And it was also kind of fun too to go to see like the Newport Gulls, where you're going and watching this baseball game in this stadium that's a century old. Because I think that's part of it too, is going and seeing these communities that have long had baseball. So I don't know that there was any state that I was like, oh, here we go. I do think there was a lot though that I didn't have any idea what to expect, and I didn't know if the experience would be all that I thought it would be. And yeah, I think South Dakota, Rhode Island, those probably fit the bill as much as anything. Even Maine to a degree, even though the Sea Dogs have kind of a national reputation. I didn't know if it would be as cool as what I was told, and it was ended up being cooler. So I think, yeah, I think every place I went, I think I only legitimately had a not great experience at two or three of the ballparks that we went to in this whole excursion.
I mean, those are pretty good stats, right? Like I would think anybody would take those odds if they knew that that was the stat line that they had a chance to
Yeah.
have a good time.
I don't know if what my ballpark travel war would be or
Yeah.
wins trips created plus. I don't know what that would be, but it was good.
Yeah. I mean, so how long did this take you, right? Like, did you start counting states? Did you go back to your childhood and start thinking about things that you did, or was there a starting point where you're like, okay, from here on out, now we're counting?
Okay, that's a great question. And the beginning of the count to a degree, yes. In my childhood, I never went anywhere but the Astrodome. So that was pretty easy to say, okay. But when I was in the military, I generally speaking went to the ballpark in wherever I was stationed. And so that's kind of where I started the count. And I will say, though, that I got to every state that I had already been to before for whatever reason, except for New Orleans. So really the only team on my list was the Zephyrs, who just don't exist anymore. But um, yeah, like my initial accounting of Oklahoma was the Red Hawks. I mean, they weren't even the Dodgers yet. But then I'd since been to the Drillers. So um, most of those states that I had already visited, except for New Orleans, I was able to kind of get back to. So it wasn't like I was counting something from 38 years ago or something like that.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
think it
All right.
matters, though. It does matter.
It
I mean,
it definitely does. It's totally different now, you know? I mean, I'm sure that's one of the things that you saw as you made this journey was how quickly things change, right? Like you can go to a team and then a year later they're no longer there or they've got a new owner or,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, when we went to Fayetteville for our first season, and that was purely that was a ballpark and a dream of what they thought that area would be like. And then I went back for their 5 year anniversary, and the dream came true. I mean, it was this amazing, just apartment buildings and retail and things like that. So it showed what that team has a special place in my heart because they are near like the 82nd Airborne, and military based minor league teams are my favorites. And what a great piece of community they have formed in an area that really needs all the community it can get. So it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean that's another great thing about minor league baseball is it just ties into the community so much more than the major league teams ever really will ever be able to. So I know that that's one of the primary reasons that it has a special place in your heart too. But
Absolutely, yeah.
do you think, all right, so we talked about why you decided to do this and how far back it went and all of that stuff. But like, are the reasons that you started this the same as the reasons that you kept doing it in the middle of it? Are they the same as the reasons that you decided, okay, this is worth completing all the way? Or did that kind of adjust as things went along?
There were always moments of, is it worth it? You know, I think there's always that when you're trying something big and you know that it's a project like it. One of the things I prided myself on from both my film career to this is I'm pretty good at long-term planning and meeting a goal. I think I really set my mind that I'm going to do this 4 years ago. And so we crossed off 49 and 50 this year. So yeah, there was moments where, because part of what I'm trying to do with the show was really create a community, and some of the teams just didn't want that, and some of the teams were um, un, unbelievably not receptive to the idea of somebody wanting to help offer some degree of national exposure to their team. And so sometimes those were the moments when I'd get back to the hotel room. There was a team in Pennsylvania that were just downright hostile while we were there. And sitting in the room going like, what's the point? Like, if nobody cares, why are we doing this? I thought I had at least some of my reasons for doing it, I thought were relatively noble. So there was some of that. Um, there were some experiences where I never said a bad thing about any of the teams. I just didn't do the show if I thought it was a bad experience. So you're not, I don't believe in the whole, negative internet barstool kind of thing. So, but there were moments where I was like, people should know that they were like not the best. So, I think that's the biggest thing is when you get in it, you fall into the trap of not wanting to do it or going to a park for park's sake. And so I had to make sure I'm focused on, no, I'm here for a reason, not just to see 2.5 hours of baseball to check a box. So those are I think my two biggest struggles.
Yeah, I think that's a common one is, people kind of they get pulled into this. I want to hit all 30 ballparks or I want to do whatever. And then it just becomes this methodical, okay, I'm here, I've done it. Now it's on to the next one. And maybe they're not taking an opportunity to really like enjoy the place that they're at or have, conversations with the locals and things like that. So it's pretty cool that you were cognizant of that like along the way. Obviously, you had to be because you were producing a TV show that needed to incorporate all those components.
Right.
But um, you know, looking back, it's pretty cool that you were able to kind of remain present, even knowing that you got to get your shot list or, interview
Yeah.
this guy or whatever it is. You know how that goes. It's just, hopefully you were able to enjoy it somewhat as a fan of the game too, which I know you're just a huge fan.
It made my fandom stronger. And I think that was one of my favorite parts. It put me in a place where I could just not just be an Astros fan, but it became a fan of baseball. And I'm even kind of excited that it's carried over to adding the major league clubs that we did this year, where it would be kind of neat that if the Phillies win it, because I had a great time at the ballpark. They were super nice. So I do think it's made me a fan of baseball more as a whole, which has paid dividends in my life more than I ever could have imagined. And it's created a thing that's brought my daughter and I closer. It's it's the cliche of the family, but it really is something that's made our core family of my wife and my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids. It's a thing that we all six of us really enjoy together. And if we don't get to do it for a while or miss it, and I think, again, I don't know that it would have been the same way if it was just to Minute Maid Park every year. I think doing this exploration and including them, or seeing my baseball family grow, like with you, for example. I mean, I think you're one of the best people I know, and I would have met you if it didn't happen for this. Or, I was teasing Paul Caputo on text last night because at the recording of this, he didn't know if he was going to win a baseball game or jump off a roof. So I was, of course, being supportive of that. So yeah, I think it's enriched me way more than just the game itself, and that's, I think, made it I'm so happy I did it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed about like becoming more involved in the baseball world as a whole instead of just a fan of my team is that like it kind of has taken the sting out of when the Rays let you down a little bit, right? Like, I mean, it used to be that that was my primary focus. And now I can think about all of the other things that the game has given to me. So while I'm still upset when they are miserable, I can look at the relationships that the game has helped grow. And it sounds like, you and your family are right there. And I imagine that's kind of a cool side effect you weren't necessarily looking for.
No, and you're right. I mean, I think I was over the wild card loss. I mean, it happened on one of the worst days of my life, which maybe is a bad example, but I'm definitely over it quicker. I mean, 36 hours and this thing was gone, and it was. I mean, still watching the playoff games, so having a good time. And in many ways, having more fun because I can watch the Phillies and the Mets slug it out, going, I'm going to sleep regardless of who wins. Would not have been the case if it had been one of my teams. So yeah, I think it definitely has helped that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm right there with you. It's like, my heart can barely handle the drama and I don't have a dog in the fight. So it's, a little less stressful that way. But all right, major accomplishment. You've completed it. You've really had a good time with it, it sounds like. But, I think myself at least, but I imagine a lot of folks at home are wondering, all right, what's next, right? Like, what's the next thing that you're turning focus to?
So I think in many ways I'm turning the focus back with the new venture, with the new show. I think I have the opportunity to complete Let's Get Two's mission better, and so I want to do that. And so um, I'm going to be going back to some places that are still new to me. But now that I can go tell the story again, I know the story better. I can maybe be more effective, and I am sort of, because of the nature of the show, getting invested in going to the major league parks as well, and have kind of plotted out the 5 seasons of the show where they will include getting to all 30 in that time frame, including, we think, a new one for Tampa in season 5 of the show, and a new one for wherever the A's end up.
Right. Yeah.
Saskatoon, Canada, who knows, wherever. So I'm looking forward to that, because I do think that we should understand in culture that just because you're not playing Major League Baseball doesn't mean what you're doing isn't worthwhile. And I think baseball is the most unique sport about that, where you can find it played at a pretty high level in 200 cities across the country. And so I'm hoping that by creating a show that's a little bit more general audience and less already, like, it's like, instead of selling crack to an already crack, that's a bad example.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, trying to, like, now the idea is to approach somebody who's like, oh, I've heard of the Durham Bulls. Let me check in on this and also learn about the Greensboro Grasshoppers or whoever. So I think that's kind of what's next part of it for me, is in many ways being a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more going back to some places that I love or some places that I missed, because I should really get to Wyoming or I should really get to Montana. So that's, I think, something I'm looking forward to, is a little bit more leisurely approach to it.
Yeah, you have a little more freedom. You're not, trying to keep with the timeline. So what
Yeah.
what fits when it fits is ideal at this point. But all right, my biggest thing is whenever I talk to somebody who's done something super inspiring, something that makes me kind of step back and go like, all right, that was a plan. It was drawn up and it was executed on. I'm always wondering, like, what's the one thing that you either wish you had known going into this process, or the thing that you would kind of encourage someone who's like a little on the fence of probably not going to all 50 states for a ball game, but just kind of going out of their comfort zone a little bit and giving something a shot?
I think, and this definitely something I wish I could go back and do, is be more dedicated to the process. Allow yourself time to experience it. I think the best way to experience these ballparks in the way I want to would have been to gone to 2 games each. One where I just sit there as a fan and I soak it in and then do the work, because there was always moments where I didn't necessarily get to do that as much. And also, I wish I got out into the community more. I did a lot of it, but not enough. And we spent a lot of time in Greenville, Tennessee, and we like discovered this really cool car museum, and this lady that insisted we eat her. She had a breakfast space and insisted we eat her biscuits and gravy. And I'm like, I don't really like biscuits and gravy. Oh, child, you don't like so stuff like that. I need more biscuits and gravy is what it is. No, I just wish I wish I had taken more time. It's like everything else in life. I wish I could have just absorbed every single second a little bit more and bought fewer t-shirts. Yeah.
Oh, that part's really relatable for me.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's tough for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think this is just the coolest thing. And the best part about it is, like, you'll have the opportunity to go back there and do the things that you wish you had had a chance to do, right? So to your point of, now there's a lot less pressure on the timeline, and when you need to be somewhere, you can take your time, you can spend your time and meet more people, shake more hands, and just get to know the country a little better, which is one of the best parts about it. So just
I'd
super
also have to
cool.
get my wife to more games, but that's something else we'll work on.
Yeah, exactly. Always a challenge too, right?
Yeah.
Thank you again, Anna, for interviewing us, also for being one of our contributors on Ballpark Nation, and really for doing everything you do for our baseball family, bringing a sense of positivity. But also, what impresses me most about Anna, and I'm going to talk directly to her, what impresses me most about you, Anna, is you are kind and you are incredibly positive, but incredibly driven. And I think one of the things we're missing in this indie media landscape, and it's something that you have in spades, is drive and a goal and making sure that you put out a great product and that you continue to build people up. And I'm very envious in your ability to do that, and something that I'm definitely hoping I model as well, because again, I just love the way you handle yourself, and I think it's something all of us could learn a little from. Now, along this journey for 50, I get a lot of, oh, there's a baseball team there? And the answer is yes. And our last trip was to Hawaii, and we went to visit the Honolulu Baseball League. And in some ways, this was my favorite ballpark experience, because these were people playing for the love of the game. Now, the Honolulu Baseball League is a wood bat league. It is I don't know if you call it an amateur league or a semi-pro league. I'm not sure how you would refer to it. But these are guys that live on the island of Oahu who, a lot of them are former minor leaguers, former college players. Maybe some of them are in the military serving there. But they also have this drive for the game. And so they got after it and played a really intense baseball game that we got to watch. They played hard, you guys. There was not a lot of concern for one's body or oneself as they got after it. And it was a playful rivalry. You could tell everybody was having a good time. You had the vibe in the community that comes from, and I mean this as an ultimate compliment, a beer league, softball league, but watching really, really high caliber baseball players get after it. So I couldn't think of a better way to watch our quest for 50 as we watch some baseball as the sun set with the Honolulu skyline behind us. It was a great experience to finally say that I've seen baseball in all 50 of our amazing states. So if you've been following along all season, we have been adding some of our ballparks that we visited to the Jim's Must Visit list. Now, it might seem like the majority of the ballparks we visited made the list, and that's because they have. Now, part of that is because for our season, we picked ballparks that we knew we would love, or even some that we'd visited before that we had a great time, because at the end of the day, we are creating a television show that we want people to keep watching. But I'm a guy who promises things. I am a ranker, and so I'm going to rank our major league parks that are on our Jim's Must Visit list. So first up, we're going to rank the major league parks that we visited with Ballpark Nation that made the Jim's Must Visit list. The one caveat being is I'm not going to include Minute Maid Park in the rankings. If I rank it too high, people are going to think it's because I'm a homer. And if I rank it too low, people are going to think it's because I don't want to appear as a homer. I think Minute Maid Park is definitely in the top third of ballparks, particularly the ones that I've visited, but I've heard a lot of people say great things. It's on my must-visit list for a reason. And what's kind of neat is if you go to Minute Maid Park and you see everything that the park has to offer, you also end up in a downtown that's become a thriving place for bars and restaurants and a really good place to have a good time. And if you've grown up in Houston like I did, you remember probably a day 30 years ago where downtown really wasn't anything. It was just businesses, so people left and then it was empty. So when the Astros put Minute Maid Park downtown and then the convention center was downtown, all of a sudden you have an entire social environment growing up around the ballpark. So again, definitely you'll want to go to visit Minute Maid Park. You're going to want to go to some restaurants. And as I said last episode, go to Bungalow. Absolutely my favorite restaurant in downtown Houston. Yeah, it's pricey, and yeah, it's worth it. They really should sponsor the show. So there are 5 ballparks that are eligible to be ranked at the major league level, and coming in at number 5 was Guaranteed Rate Field, home of the Chicago White Sox. What I like about it is it was just comfortable. Everything was wide open, everything was available, and it had a really great variety of food and drink options. And It just felt like a relaxed environment. I like that you have the outfield concourse set up like a couple of the ballparks on our list. So yeah, guaranteed rate field. I think it's a must visit. And I mostly think that it gets kind of the short end of the stick because it's in the same town as Wrigley. But really and truly, it would be one of my favorite places to go hang out if I lived in Chicago. Now, number 4, this is probably where I start to get some eye rolls. But I went into this with no preconceived notions. I'm not trying to create a list that either is super controversial or is a list that I will make to appease people. Number 4 I have coming in as Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field is beautiful. The history you can just feel all over the place. Wrigleyville outside it is super cool. It's a great place to go and hang out and watch a ball game. I don't really have any complaints about it, especially because whatever complaints I might have, or because the ballpark's 100 years old. And so particularly for being a 100-year-old ballpark, it looks great, it's comfortable, and there's just something about the ivy on the wall. I don't know, something that makes you feel like very baseball-y when you're out there. Now, number 3 on our list, Citizens Bank Ballpark, home of Paul Caputo of Baseball by Design's Philadelphia Phillies. The highlight for me about Citizens Bank Ballpark, and look, there are a lot of them. Again, they really do a good job of, because it's a newer ballpark, making sure that there's plenty of options to hang out, to watch a game, to drink, to socialize. But I love everything they had set up for kids. I don't think I've ever seen a rock wall at a ballpark, and I know like baseball purists, frankly, there are no baseball purists watching this show, I don't think. Probably not. But yeah, I get it. My grandfather would be irritated about such things. But the reality is this is the world we live in. Baseball teams aren't competing against other baseball teams for attendance. They are competing against theme parks and movie theaters and just staying home. And so they have to create a more holistic experience for the people that attend the ballpark. And the Phillies at Citizens Bank Ballpark do that in spades. Number 2 is Citi Field of the New York Mets. And look, I went back and forth between them and the Phillies, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Kind of like the 2017 Game 5 of the World Series, but without the heartburn or heart attack for me. But I put the Mets in front of it because I had a way different game day experience. And I think part of it is because the Phillies were expected to be really good. So there was a certain tone in the crowd. Where we went to the Mets game, first of all, it was an Astros game, so I went in Astros gear, and they were unbelievably cool. It was at the time in the season where they were basically the 2 hottest teams in baseball, and I think the Astros won the series 2-3, but it was like every game was a slugfest, and it was like a boxing match. But I like how into the game the crowd was. If you stopped anybody to talk about the Mets, they were down to talk about their Mets. I really appreciated that because that's kind of what I'm used to seeing at Minute Maid Park is, you run into a visiting fan and you want to talk to them. We create a friendly environment, and it felt a friendly environment. The environment at Citi Field felt friendly to me, and they also had all the same stuff that we're talking about. The outfield is double-decker with references to the Mets of the past, but also really cool restaurants and bars. They also had a very cool kids area, complete with a full wiffle ball field. So again, lots of stuff for a family to do. And if you think about it, you're living in New York City, the city where you're a train ride away from everything, or Uber for me. I don't do trains. That's my inner Texan coming out. But you have to realize that you're competing with so much to get people into the ballpark, and you want to give them their money's worth because, yeah, it is expensive to get into a ballpark. It is even more expensive to get into a ballpark in New York City. So when you get people in, you want to give them a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff to see, and a lot of variety, and the New York Mets at Citi Field do that. I felt like I could go to 2 or 3 different Mets games and probably have a completely different experience, and all those experiences would be positive. And our favorite ballpark of the year, number 1 with a bullet. And first of all, I can't express to you how close these were. We did have a rubric for my teacher friends out there, and we had scores and averages. And I want to say Target Field probably had like a 4.5, and then Wrigley had a 4.4. I mean, it was like 4.2 to 4.5. And I'm the kind of teacher that very rarely gives 100, so there were very few 5s. We haven't had a 5 yet. But number 1 for us was Target Field. I pretty much fell in love the minute I walked up and first saw the ballpark. Just the outer construction of the steel and the glass and the limestone. It was this futuristic and classic ballpark. Lots of stuff to do, incredibly comfortable, embracing its history of being the home of the Twins and also creating a very modern experience. It was a blast. There was plenty of places to hang out and socialize, which we got to do because we hung out with some of our friends. All in all, just a great ballpark experience, and I will definitely go back again. Target Field, #1 ballpark we visited in 2024. For the minor league ballparks, while we will be talking about which ones made the Jim Must Visit list, we're not going to rank them. In part because you can't really judge a AAA ballpark versus a single A ballpark because the size is going to be different, the needs are different, the experience is going to be different. And our goal of this show is for you to go visit these ballparks. So trust me, if it's a place that we picked and I put it on this list, is absolutely worth your time to visit. So we're actually going to discuss these ballparks in the order in which they came out this season. So the ones that made Jim's Must Visit list, we're going to begin with Whataburger Field, home of the Corpus Christi Hooks. I don't know that I've seen a more jazzed up crowd for minor league baseball than I have every single time I've been to a Hooks game. They don't have a major league team within 3 hours of this ballpark. So in many ways, the Hooks are their major league team. You're seeing season ticket holders and repeat attendees every single game you're at. And the ballpark is beautiful with the bridge going over right field and the USS Lexington in the back. So Whataburger Field, home of the Hooks. The next one we visited and the next one on our list is Rio Grande Federal Credit Union Ballpark, home of your Albuquerque Isotopes. The ballpark is beautiful. The surrounding area outside, we talk about those views outside the outfield. Stunning. When the sun goes down, it is perfect. And no matter what kind of night you go on, if you're going on a Copa night or you're going to go on an Isotopes night or another theme night, everything is perfectly designed from the way the game day staff treats you, to the uniforms that are being worn, or the giveaway, or just the vibe in the stadium to make sure you have a great time. If you are a ballpark aficionado of any kind, you have to go visit the Albuquerque Isotopes. And next on our list of minor league baseball must-visits is Segra Park, home of your Columbia Fireflies. This is another ballpark where the ballpark itself is beautiful. It's incredibly user-friendly and makes for an awesome time because not only does it have the 360-degree walkway, but it's one of the best versions of it that we've seen where the ballpark itself, the seating doesn't go too high, so you almost feel, not field level, obviously, but you feel much closer to the field than you do in most ballparks when you're doing the big walk around. So we always have a great time when we're out there in Columbia, South Carolina. And we are excited to get back next season. And while we're watching this, we do want to send our hearts and love and prayers and all of that stuff to the victims of both hurricanes. I know South Carolina definitely got touched by it, as well did some of our friends in North Carolina. So we are thinking about you. And speaking of North Carolina, it's time to head to Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of the Fayetteville Woodpeckers and Segra Stadium. I love this one for many reasons. One, the connection to the military and the 82nd Airborne Division and Fort Liberty really creates an entirely unique ballpark experience. Plus, you get the big train going through by the outfield. You get a little bit of Brewster's Millions vibes without Richard Pryor or John Candy, which would actually be awesome. Both those guys are gone. I didn't mean to turn this on a sour note, but oh man, that's awful when you think about it. But highly recommend heading out there to see the Woodpeckers. It's a lot of fun. Go on their 80 Deuces nights. Meet the Devils with baggy pants. Next up on our list, the AAA Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. There's a lot about the game day experience we love, but the home run spectacular, complete with like fire and stuff, I've not seen that anywhere else. Highly recommend going, especially when the Iron Pigs are raking, because then it's like flame on. Then we're going to head up to Brooklyn, New York for the Brooklyn Cyclones. We talk all the time about where a ballpark sits matters. Not only are we right in Brooklyn, but we are part of Coney Island to the point that if you just jump over the left field fence, you're literally right next to a roller coaster. And the last minor league ballpark that we're adding to the Jim's Must Visit list is the Sugarland Space Cowboys Constellation Field. There's so much that's neat about this ballpark, but kind of one of the cool things is outside the ballpark there's a bridge with like a creek, I think, There's alligators in there. But more importantly, there's Space Cowboys inside. A couple of features of this ballpark I love. We talked about the splash pad on the episode last week, but also check out the super cool mural of Orion. It's little touches like that all over the ballpark that make you feel like you're in a whole other galaxy playing some baseball. And so that's it. That is our list of Jim's must-visit ballparks that we added in 2024. 2025, who knows if those ballparks will be added to the list.
And now on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, Jim Christopher.
And as we said, that does close the book on season 1 of Ballpark Nation. There are so many people to thank, and I'm going to try to, and I know that sometimes I'll end up forgetting, but so many people go into making this show happen. It's not just me, but there's a lot of people that are working behind the scenes and working to really make something special happen that we can help baseball fans get out to see more ballparks and get out to experience this game we all love. As I like to call it, their greatest game ever invented. And the first group of people we have to thank are all of the teams that allowed us into their ballpark, showed us the behind-the-scenes stuff, really made us feel at home, and allowed us to capture some of the great footage and the great moments that we were able to show you during our first season. When you factor in how busy any member of a minor league baseball staff is in particular, we've talked about how they pull tarp or they're out there cleaning seats before the game. The fact that they took the time to let us in and show us around really means a lot. Got to thank our writing staff. That's Paul Caputo. That is Andrew Nelson. That is Nate Hugg. These guys all work on a certain aspect of the show for each episode, and then everything that they write comes to me, and then it gets distilled, and then it becomes the script for that show. But yes, contrary to popular belief, the show is written. There's a script and everything. It's not just me rambling, even though it might seem that way. That's called acting. A very special thank you to some of our contributors. That is Anna D. Tomasso, that is Jess Canaster, and that is Emily Nyman. These three are doing their own projects and doing their own thing. Jess is part of a minor league baseball front office. Emily has her own show, the Breaking Balls podcast. Anna has Baseball Bucket List. But all three of them are willing to drop whatever they do to do some little thing that we need done for Ballpark Nation. So again, thank you, Emily, Anna, and Jess. Also want to do a very special thank you and shout out to our social media manager, Jordan Metcalf. She is young and hip and understands social media, whereas I am none of those things. So she became really important, and her importance is just going to grow as we realize that we have to move not just onto Twitter, but into the other platforms. So we're very excited for her help us get our message onto those other platforms. Our staff of producers is relatively large because we have some that are baseball people and some that are movie and TV people. It was important for me to hear from both groups as we were putting these episodes together to make sure that we really are reaching as many people as possible that might want to check this show out and then realize, hey, baseball's cool and baseball's everywhere. So a really big thank you to Andy Tomchesson, Cedric Thomas Smith, Gary C. Warren, Alicia Rivera, Carla Rodriguez, and Eric Mertens. And finally, I want to thank the executive producer of the show. She is there at every creative decision. She is the one that's there at home while I'm gallivanting all over the country going to ballparks. And that is my wife, Jessica. Jessica, I can't thank you enough for your unwavering support as I chase my dream. Your belief in me inspires me every day, and I couldn't do this without you by my side. And frankly, I wouldn't want to, because doing this with you is so much more fun than if I were doing it without you. Even on the days where I want to give up or quit, and viewers out there, there are a lot more of those than you might imagine. I would say there's probably 2 a week, because putting this together isn't easy and it's a big gamble, but I don't know that it would be worth making that gamble, or I would feel like the roll of the dice was worth it if it weren't for Jessica. So honey, thank you so much for keeping me going when I want to quit. Your encouragement means everything, and I love you more than words can express. Love isn't a big enough word. So I cannot wait to get back to the ballpark with you in 2025, whether it's at Minute Maid Park or whether it's a faraway state that we will be revealing sometime in the offseason. And so again, that is a wrap on the 2024 edition of Ballpark Nation. Finally, I do want to thank all of you for watching and listening. The show wouldn't be done if y'all didn't care and weren't interested in the show. So I cannot thank you enough for giving us your valuable time, 30 minutes a week, to learn a little bit about the greatest game ever invented. And again, that is a wrap for the 2024 baseball season. Enjoy the off season, try to survive the void, and until 2025, I'm Jim Christopher, and we're going to see you at the ballpark.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, 'cause it's root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame, 'cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the